Hello, welcome to UI and UX Design Week 4. Today's topic will be wireframes. Wireframes are layouts of a potential user interface done just with lines. No art assets will be used. Creating wireframes allows us to design the layout of the elements on the screen and try different layouts before proceeding to the actual development of the interface. When we're creating wireframes, we're trying to answer a couple of questions. Those are, how will things be positioned on the screen? And how large will different elements be? For this demo, we're going to be using the same tool that we used for our flow diagrams previously. We'll be using draw.io to create our wireframes. So just as we've done before, we will go to New, and then under More, we will find draw.io diagrams. We will start with a blank document. And let's start by creating an outline for our actual screen. So we'll start with a rectangle. And it's important here to think about what screen size the user will have on their target device. So if you're making a game that is for a mobile device, they generally have wider screens if you're doing it in landscape mode, or taller if you're doing it in portrait mode. If you're doing it for just a standard computer screen, it's generally pretty much always wider than it is tall, and you don't have to be exact here because computer screens have a lot of different aspect ratios, and you just want to get something that will be a good representation of what their screen might look like. So you also want to make this large enough that you have enough space to really work in for your wireframe. So that looks pretty good there. And so this is going to be my start screen. So my start screen will definitely have a button for start, and I just double clicked on it so that I can type inside. And the important thing here is not what it looks like so much as what size it is and where it is positioned. So I want my start button to be in the center, but horizontal or vertically, but not necessarily horizontally. So I'm going to raise it up a little bit so I have room for some other buttons underneath. And then you can just copy and paste to create another button that's the same size. This one will be for options. And then paste one more, and this will be exit. You might have more buttons than this depending on the type of game that you're working on, but this is pretty standard for a start screen. So the one thing that we are missing is generally you have the title of the game somewhere on the screen. I'm going to put mine across the top up here. So I'm just going to bring in text object, and I'm going to put game title. I don't have a title for my game that I'm working with, but hopefully you have a title for yours, so you can use that title here. And we want this to be pretty large for the text for this. And we'll position this in the center. And that looks pretty good. So this will be our start screen. And I might actually lower these down just a little bit so I can give this a little more room. Okay, so that's my start screen layout. Now I want all of my screens to be the same size. So I'm going to copy and paste this outer outline, drag it over here to create my second screen. So the second one I'm going to work with, I'm going to say this will be the options menu. So I want to use the same size text. So I'm going to copy and paste this and bring this over. And this will be options. And now we need to think about what will actually be on our options screen. So we might have some drop-down menus. So I'm going to go ahead and create something that just sort of represents a drop-down. And I'm going to use a triangle to be the little drop-down arrow. And I'm going to put some text in here for the placeholder for what will be in this drop-down. Let's say this is for allowing the user to change their screen resolution. So might start with 1920 by 1080 as the default. And now here's where we want to think about where we're positioning things. So I think I'm going to have a line of text coming down here and then the different options on this side. You can lay this out however you think makes sense for your game. So this will be screen resolution. And I want my text to be left justified so that all of my text will be lined up. So I'm going to copy and paste a couple of these so I get about the same size. And my second one will be graphics quality. And now we might have one for music volume. And if you find yourself having a lot of different options, you might actually want to have two different options pages, one for video options and one for audio options. And you could have two separate ones here from the main screen, or on your options page, you might have two buttons, one that takes you to your video options and one that takes you to your audio options. And for some games, you might even have more than just those two. So make sure that you look at references of similar games to see what kinds of things they have in their options menu. And so now I'll have one for effects volume. And so graphics quality will also be a drop down. I'm going to make this move this up a little bit. So graphics quality is usually high, medium, or low. So that's what I'll put in as the placeholder there. Music volume and effects volume, these will both be sliders. So I'm going to, I'm going to use this rounded rectangle to represent my slider. And I'll use a circle for the handle of the slider. Copy and paste that for my effects volume. And maybe we'll have the effects higher and the music volume lower. It's generally the way people play. And so one more that I generally like to include is Colorblind Mode. Some games have this for accessibility purposes. Sorry, I'm going to copy and paste this text. So Colorblind Mode changes the actual color of the game to make it easier for people with colorblindness to actually distinguish the different elements of the game. So colorblind mode will be a checkbox. So I'll put a square here for this. And I'm going to have one more thing that will have a checkbox, and it will be shadows. Sometimes it helps to be able to turn off shadows in the game. Makes it easier, makes it run better on some computers. And if we look down under some of these, we might be able to find something that looks like a check mark that we can use. There we go. So we have a check mark. And I want to make this smaller. And we'll put that for colorblind mode. And then we'll leave shadows unchecked. That way we can see the two different states that this can be. So here's a layout for an options menu. Again, this depends a lot on the type of game you're making, and you should definitely choose options elements that make sense for the type of game that you are making. So now the next thing I'm going to make is I'm going to say when the player starts the game, the first page that they go to is a character creation page. Or, well, first we'll want to see if they are starting a new game or continuing from a previous game. So I'm going to bring my start button down here. And so we'll do new game. And let's make this one a little wider. And our other option will be load game. And now anytime you can get to a screen, it's really helpful to be able to get back from that screen. So I'm going to make a back button here. So let's see, main menu. So this will take them back to the start screen. In case they hit start, they come to this screen and they decide, wait a minute, I actually want to go back and change some of my options. So this allows them to go back. So now let's say they hit the screen, and the next screen when they hit new game, I'm going to have them go to a character creation page where they can create a new character. So I'm going to bring down some text here, and this will be create your character, and make this a little wider so it'll all fit on one line. All right, and now we have our character customization screen. Let's capitalize this. So on the character customization screen, I'm going to say maybe just sort of as a placeholder, I'm going to put something in the middle that looks like a character. And if you ever need to rearrange things, you can right-click on an object and say to front or to back to bring it in front of or behind something else. All right, so this is just a placeholder to represent where the character is on the screen during this character customization. So I'm actually going to move this down a little bit. So I'm going to have my different panels over here for things that I'm selecting. So for character customization, I'm going to first have some, oops, sorry about that. So the first thing I want to do is have a couple of different sections. So I might have hair, clothes, something like that. So I'm going to have a box up here for my first section. And this is going to be hair. And so hair might have different drop downs for, well, let's see. Actually, a lot of times something like hair, you'll have a color slider for the color of the hair. And so let's make a gradient. And we'll change this to east. And so we'll do from blonde to black. Let's make this actually a little more yellower. All right, so this is a color gradient we could use for the hair color. And some other things that generally you can change about the hair is the length of the hair and the style of the hair. So for those, I'm going to create a couple of drop downs, and I'm going to uncheck this gradient. We don't want the gradient anymore. This is going to be a drop down. And so we need our little triangle again. And so this will be our hair length. So we'll do long. And so then this drop down would have other options in it, like short or medium. And then we'll probably have a second drop down for the style. And just to keep it simple, I'm just going to say style 1. And then the drop down will have different styles. The user can select the different styles to see what those different hairstyles look like. So that will be for hair. And now I'm going to have a second panel below that, which is going to be for clothes. And so this gradient, I'm still going to use a gradient here, but I'm going to actually, sometimes they'll have just like a regular color picker for this. So you can pick, basically it'll come out like this where you can pick any color you want. But to keep it simple, I'm just going to use a gradient again, and we'll just do a range from red to blue so they can drag along this gradient slider and choose the color they want for their clothes. And so clothes probably again will have style. So we'll do shirt 1 and pants 3. So they'll have a drop down that has different options for pants and different options for shirts. A lot of times these are just numbered, and then the player has to actually look and see what the result is on their character to see if they like it. Now, an important thing to have on the character customization screen is a couple of buttons. One that will actually start the game, and one that will take you back to the menu. We don't want the player getting stuck on this character creation page and not able to go anywhere. So let's do accept. So this will accept the character we've created and continue into the game. And we'll have one below that. That will be main menu. And one other thing we need is a way to name the character. So we'll use a text box for this. We'll do it right below the character. And put in just a random name that the user can replace if they want. A lot of times games like this will also have a randomize button to randomize the name. So I'm going to put a button like that down below the name. And we'll make this a little smaller so that it's distinct from the other buttons. And I'm actually going to move these up a little bit just to try a little bit of a different layout. So you might want to try a few different layouts for this screen until you find something that you like. And I want to make sure that I have a pretty good balance of content on the screen so that the screen isn't too messy in one area and has too much blank space in another area. So that'll do it for the character creation screen. And the one last screen that I'm going to make is going to be the in-game screen, which will be a heads-up display. So bring this over here. So this will be what our game looks like when you're actually playing. So a lot of times if you have a character customization screen, you'll have an actual character that you can see in the game. Not a whole lot of games do character customization and then a first-person game because you can't actually see the character that you created. So I'm going to bring a little character in here to the center of the screen. Oops. And oops, trying to get rid of the text for this because we don't need this text. Oh well. I guess I can't get rid of this text here. So, oh, there we go. Okay, so get rid of that text. We don't need that text. So I just have my character in the center of the screen. Now I want to think about what are some things that I will have in my heads-up display. So I will probably have something like health and mana. So I'll put a couple of bars down in the corner. I might also have some kind of icon for my character in the corner to let the player know that these are the character's stats. So I'll use this to represent my character icon. And I'll have a health bar. And I will make the health green. And then I'll make a second bar, and this will be, let's say, mana for this game. Oops. So mana I will make blue. And I want my mana bar a little bit different than my health bar so that you can tell them apart. And then I'll bring my icon to the front and adjust these so you can see they can be different. So this will be health, mana, and I might also want to have my player's level on here somewhere. So if the player can level up, they can see what level they're at. So I'm going to bring a text object over here. Let's say they're level 26. All right, and maybe I'll have a Minimap in the corner so the player can see, where they're at and what's going on. So I'll bring a square down here. And I'm just going to bring this sort of wavy looking shape down here so that we get a sense that there's something going on down here. You can use whatever you want to indicate that this is some visual indicator. Maybe I'll even use one of these to sort of show the player where they're at. All right, so that'll be my Minimap. And so these things can be laid out however you want on the screen. Some games will have the health and mana bars across the top. Some will have them centered in the bottom. Some have the Minimap icon in different corners. In some games, you can actually move things around yourself, but we don't want to get that complicated with this one. So the one other thing that I want to add to this is I'm going to say the player has quests that they are trying to complete. So I'm going to bring some text over here. And we'll say objectives. And kill 100 worms. And I'll go ahead and give one more. Second objective will be collect lost dagger. And I just want to give these a little bit of indentations. Okay, so this will be where the player can find their list of objectives that they're trying to achieve. And I want to make this a little bit smaller text size so that it's not obscuring too much of the screen. It's important to think about what kind of action the player will be encountering here in the middle and making sure that elements on the screen are not covering up too much of the space that the player can't actually see what's going on. So we might actually scale some of these other things down a little bit so that we can move things off of the screen a little bit better. That way the player has more space to play in. I'm also going to right justify these so they come all the way to the edge. And that looks pretty good. So we have a little bit more space up here if we had some other kind of information that we wanted to convey to the player. Maybe they have some tool that they can have equipped, and we could indicate, we might indicate down here what tool they have equipped, and then we could move the health and mana bar up to the top. So there's different ways that we could lay this out, but this layout will work for the information that I'm using here. But as always, make sure that the information you're using is based on the type of game that this UI would be created for. So that's all you need to know for creating wireframes for your different screens. You'll want to make sure that you save these in a way that you can view them later, and so you can export them as a PNG or a JPEG so that you can open them up later on. So that does it for wireframes for user interface. Next week, we will start working on putting these things into Unity to create an actual interactive interface.